My 10-year-old had been talking about our trip nonstop. 2 days before we left, my mom arrived and said, "You're giving your spot to your brother's kids." He held my card like it was done. My kid looked at me heartbroken. I stayed calm and said this. My son came home from school every single day for 3 weeks with a countdown written on his hand in marker. Mom, 14 days. Mom, 9 days. Mom, 6 days. We were going to San Diego. The zoo, the beach, the whole thing. I'd been saving for months, putting aside a little from the flower shop every week. And I'm not talking about some luxury vacation. I'm talking about a motel with a pool and maybe some fish tacos on the boardwalk. That was our big dream. And honestly, that trip meant more to me than any 5-star resort ever could, because my boy Caleb, he's 10. He'd never seen the ocean. Never. The ocean. So yeah, I was going to make it happen. Now, before I get into what went down 2 days before we were supposed to leave, I need to give you some background, because otherwise none of this is going to make sense. And trust me, when I tell you what my mother did, you're going to need the full picture to believe it. About 1.5 years ago, I made a mistake. A big one. I gave my mom access to my bank account. Now, before you judge me, and honestly, you can judge me, I judge myself every day for it, let me explain why. She had a medical bill. Something with her knee. She needed surgery, and the insurance didn't cover all of it. And she was crying on the phone telling me she didn't know what she was going to do. And I felt terrible because regardless of everything, she's still my mom, right? So I added her to my account so she could pull what she needed for the copay. It was supposed to be temporary. One time. Done. But my mom, Diane, she never took herself off the account. And I was too busy, or honestly too scared of the argument, to bring it up. First, it was small. She'd check my balance and make comments. "Nancy, you spent $40 at Target. What did you need from Target?" Or, "Why are you buying Caleb new sneakers when his old ones still fit?" Like she was auditing me. I let it slide because I didn't want the fight. Then it got worse. She started telling me how to run the shop. I own a little flower shop called Petal and Thorn. My best friend Shelby came up with the name. And I opened it about 3 years ago with money I saved working 2 jobs after my divorce. Every dollar I have, I earned with my own hands. But because the business expenses ran through the same account again, my fault. I know suddenly Diane had opinions about everything. "You're spending too much on roses. Nobody buys roses in March." Now, it's a flower shop. People always buy roses. But the real breaking point? That came with Caleb. Would you believe me if I told you my own mother started going after my 10-year-old? Caleb is a sensitive kid. He's sweet. He's quiet. And he's the kind of boy who draws you pictures when he thinks you're sad. He's my whole world. And Diane started making comments to him. Not to me, to him. About money. She'd say things like, "Your mom can't afford that," or, "Don't ask your mom for things. She doesn't have the money." One time, and this is the one that still makes my chest tight, Caleb came to me and said, "Mom, are we poor?" He was 9. I asked him why he thought that, and he said, "Grandma told me you don't make enough money, and that's why we can't have nice things." I could have screamed. I wanted to, but I didn't. I just hugged him and told him we were doing just fine and that Grandma didn't know what she was talking about. But inside I was done. I started making a plan to remove her from the account. Do you think I waited too long? Be honest. Because looking back, I know I did. But when it's your mother, you keep hoping she'll just stop. She didn't stop. And then came the trip. 2 days before Caleb and I were supposed to leave for San Diego, Diane showed up at my front door. No call, no text, just showed up. And she wasn't alone in spirit. She had this energy about her, this look on her face, like she'd already made a decision and was just there to deliver the news. She walked in, sat down at my kitchen table, and said, "And I will never forget these words I've been thinking, and it makes more sense for your brother's kids to go instead." My brother Derek has 3 kids. Derek also has a wife, a full-time job, and 2 working cars. Derek is fine. Derek was not part of this trip. Derek didn't even know about this trip. But Diane had decided. She pulled my debit card out of her purse, my card, which she had because of the shared account, and set it on the table like it was a gavel, like the ruling had been made. Derek's kids haven't been on a vacation in 2 years, she said. Caleb will understand. Caleb was standing right there. He'd walked in from the living room when he heard her voice because he loves his grandma. He was standing there in his little shark t-shirt, the one he picked out specifically for the trip, and he looked at me with this face that I can still see when I close my eyes. He didn't cry. That's the part that killed me. He didn't cry. He just looked at me like he was waiting to see what I would do, like he already knew the answer might hurt. And I stayed completely calm. You know that kind of calm that's actually dangerous? That kind of calm where you're so angry that your body just goes still? That was me. I looked at my mother. I picked up the card from the table, and I said, "Mom, Caleb and I are going on this trip. It's paid for, it's planned, and it's happening. But what's not happening anymore is you having access to my money. I'm going to the bank tomorrow, and I'm removing you from my account. And if Derek's kids need a vacation, Derek can plan one." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You're being selfish," she said. "I'm trying to help this family." "No," I said. "You're trying to control this family, and I'm done letting you." She got up. She didn't say goodbye to Caleb. She just walked out and slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Caleb looked at me and said, "Are we still going?" I knelt down and said, "Baby, we are absolutely still going." And we did. We went to San Diego, and he saw the ocean for the first time, and he screamed, "It's so big," and ran straight into the waves with his shoes on. And I stood there crying behind my sunglasses like some kind of movie scene, except it was real and it was mine. But when we got back, that's when everything fell apart because Diane, she did not take what I said well, not well at all. And what she did next, honestly, I still can't believe she went that far. So we got back from San Diego on a Sunday night. Caleb was sunburned, exhausted, and completely happy. He fell asleep in the car holding a stuffed sea lion he picked out at the zoo gift shop. "Named it, Captain." I'm not kidding. Captain the sea lion. This kid, I swear. Monday morning, I went straight to the bank. First thing, doors barely open. I sat down with the account manager, a really nice guy named Terrence, and I said, "I need to remove my mother from my account today." He looked at me like he'd heard this story before. And honestly, he probably had. And 20 minutes later, it was done. New card, new PIN, new everything. I walked out of that bank feeling like I had just taken off a backpack full of rocks. And for about 2 weeks, nothing. Silence. No calls from Diane. No texts. No surprise visits. Just quiet. You ever had that kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful? Feels like something's loading? Yeah, that's what it was. My cousin Tamra. She's the one person in my family who's always had my back no matter what. She called me during that quiet stretch and said, "Nancy, your mom's been telling people you stole from her." I almost dropped my phone. Stole from her? Stole what? She's saying you locked her out of the account after she helped you build your business. She's telling your aunts, your Uncle Ray, everybody. She's saying you used her and then cut her off. Can you imagine? The woman who was monitoring my Target purchases, telling my son we were poor, and trying to hand my vacation to my brother's kids, she's the victim now. Classic Diane. I didn't call her. I didn't respond. Tamara told me to stay quiet and let it blow over. And honestly, that was good advice. Shelby said the same thing. Don't feed it, Nancy. She wants a reaction. So I didn't react. And that was my mistake. Because apparently, when Diane doesn't get a reaction, she escalates. I need to tell you about a Wednesday morning, about 3 weeks after we got back from San Diego. I was driving to the shop. Petal and Thorn opens at 8, and I usually get there around 7:15 to prep the arrangements for the day. I had coffee in one hand, a playlist going. Caleb was at school. Normal morning. Good morning, actually. I was feeling okay for the first time in a while. I turned the corner onto the street where the shop is, and I saw it before I even pulled into the parking lot. Glass, everywhere. Both front windows of my shop shattered, completely gone. There was glass on the sidewalk, glass inside the store. Flowers knocked over, water all over the floor. My little chalkboard sign that says, "Fresh blooms daily," the one Caleb decorated with little smiley faces, was cracked in half on the ground. I sat in my car for probably 2 full minutes just staring. I couldn't move. I couldn't even process what I was looking at. You know when something is so wrong that your brain kind of rejects it? Like, no, this isn't real. I'm going to blink, and it'll be fine. It was not fine. I got out. I walked up to the front, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Sitting on the ground near the door was a brick, a regular red brick, and tucked under it was a piece of paper, a note in handwriting I've known my entire life. "You think you can just cut me off? This is what happens." My mother threw a brick through my shop windows. Let that sink in. My own mother. Now here's the part where I need you to understand something about me. I'm not a confrontational person. I avoid fights. I go quiet when I'm upset. I overthink things for days before I say anything. But standing there holding that note, looking at my destroyed shop, something in me shifted. Something just clicked into place. And I thought, no, not this time. I called the police. Do you think that was too far? Calling the cops on your own mother? Because let me tell you, my hands were shaking the entire time I was on the phone. Part of me felt like I was betraying her. Part of me felt like I was going to throw up. But then, I looked at that note again, and I looked at Caleb's little smiley faces in the broken glass, and I dialed. The officers came, took photos, took the note, asked me if I knew who did it. I said, yes. They asked, who? I said, my mother, Diane Whitfield. Saying that out loud, you have no idea. That was one of the hardest sentences I've ever spoken. The officer, a woman, actually Officer Nolan, she looked at me and just nodded like she understood. She didn't judge me. She just said, we'll follow up. And they did. Here's something I didn't expect, though. The shop had a security camera. I had installed it 6 months earlier because there had been a break-in on the same block, and Shelby had practically forced me to get one. Nancy, you need cameras. Stop being stubborn. Thank God for Shelby, because that camera caught everything. Caught my mother pulling up at 2. 0 inches the morning. It caught her getting out of her car with 2 bricks. 2. She came prepared, and hurling them through both windows. It caught her leaving the note. It even caught her standing there for a second afterward, just looking at the damage before she got back in her car and drove away. When the police showed her the footage, she denied it at first. Can you believe that? The woman is literally on camera, clear as day, and she says, that's not me. Eventually, her story changed to, I was upset. I wasn't thinking clearly. And then it became, Nancy pushed me to this. Somehow, it was still my fault. But you know what? The law didn't care whose fault Diane thought it was. She was charged with vandalism and destruction of property. And because I had the note, which was basically a written confession, and the security footage and the repair estimates, she ended up with a hefty fine. We're talking thousands. And on top of that, I filed for emotional distress because I want you to understand this wasn't just broken glass. This was my livelihood. This was the thing I built from nothing after my divorce. This was everything. The fine hit her hard. I know that. And for about 5 seconds, I felt guilty. Then, I remembered Caleb's smiley faces in the glass, and the guilt went away real fast. Now, here's where things got interesting. And honestly, kind of unexpected. Because up until this point, my family had been hearing Diane's version of things, right? The version where I was the ungrateful daughter who locked her own mother out and cut her off. My Uncle Ray, my Aunt Patricia, even Derek. They were all on her side. Nobody called me. Nobody checked on me. It was like I didn't exist. But when the vandalism charges hit, when the police report became a thing people could actually see, when Tamara, God bless Tamara, started telling people what really happened, with details, with the full timeline, the phone calls started coming in. But not for Diane. For me. Aunt Patricia called first. She said, "Nancy, honey, I didn't know." She told us a completely different story. Uncle Ray texted me. And this man never texts. He still types with one finger. He wrote, "I'm sorry, Nancy, your mom was wrong, love Uncle Ray." All lowercase, no punctuation, and it nearly made me cry. Evan Derek called. My brother Derek, the one whose kids were supposed to get my vacation. He said, "Sis, I never asked her to do that. I didn't even know about your trip. She told me you offered. She told him I offered." Let me say that again. She told my brother that I offered to give up my vacation so his kids could go. And Derek believed it. Because why would your mother lie about that? So now, the whole family knew the truth. And they were furious. But not at me. At Diane. For the first time in my life, the family saw what I'd been dealing with. But you know what Diane did with all of that? With the family turning, with the fine, with everything crumbling around her? She went completely silent. No apology, no explanation, no phone call, nothing. And that silence? That was louder than any brick through a window. Tamara told me to give it time. She'll come around, Nancy. She has to. Shelby said, "Forget her. You don't owe her anything." And honestly, I didn't know which one of them was right. But then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. Something that made this whole situation 10 times harder. Because it wasn't about me and Diane anymore. It was about Caleb. And what he said to me one night completely broke my heart. So it was a Thursday night. Caleb had been quiet all evening. Not his usual quiet where he's drawing or building Legos. A different quiet. The heavy kind. He was sitting at the kitchen table pushing a grape around his plate with his finger. Not eating it, just pushing it. And without looking up, he said, "Mom, does Grandma hate us?" The air left my lungs. No, baby. Grandma doesn't hate us. Then why won't she talk to us? Did I do something wrong? This 0-year-old boy, who had nothing to do with any of this, thought it was his fault. And in that moment, I hated Diane more than I ever had. Not for the bank account. Not for the trip. Not for the windows. For this. For making my son feel like he wasn't enough. I sat next to him and explained that grown-ups sometimes handle things badly and that none of this was because of him. He listened. He nodded. Then he said, "Can I call her? Imagine that. Your mother destroyed your shop, tried to control your entire life, never apologized, and your kid wants to call her. What would you have done?" I said, "Let me think about it." He went to his room and I sat at that table and cried so hard I had to cover my face with a towel so he wouldn't hear. I called Tamara that night, almost 11, but she picked up on the second ring. That woman always shows up. I told her everything. About Caleb. The grape. The question. She was quiet for a long time. Which is unusual because Tamara normally has an opinion before you finish your sentence. Then she said, "Nancy, your mom is not going to apologize. I've known Diane my whole life. She will never say the words. You need to decide if you can live with that." She was right. I knew she was right. Diane doesn't apologize. She never has. When she's wrong, she goes silent and waits for the other person to come crawling back. That's how it's always worked. But not this time. On Saturday, I sat Caleb down. I said, "Baby, you can love Grandma. You're allowed to love her. But right now, Grandma hurt Mommy very badly and hasn't said sorry. Until she does. I don't think we should pretend everything's okay." He thought about it. Really thought. You could see the wheels turning. And then he said, "So she broke your flowers?" I almost laughed. "Yeah, baby. That's exactly what she did. That's mean," he said. "It is. She should say sorry. She should." "Okay. And then he went to play with Captain the Sea Lion like we just discussed lunch. Kids are unbelievable. They break your heart and fix it in the same conversation. Now, what was happening on Diane's side, and I only know this through Tamara, the family fallout hit her hard. Uncle Ray stopped inviting her to Sunday dinners. Aunt Patricia cut their daily calls to maybe once a week. Derek pulled back after realizing Diane had manipulated him. His wife, Jolene, told him she didn't want Diane around their kids until she got her act together. Jolene, a woman I'd spoken to maybe 5 times in my life. Sometimes support shows up where you least expect it. So Diane was alone, financially strained from the fine, isolated, and still, she didn't pick up the phone. Tamara even drove 40 minutes to talk to her, sat in her living room and said, "Diane, Nancy would talk to you if you just apologized." And Diane, arms crossed, staring at the TV, said, "I have nothing to apologize for." Months went by. Caleb stopped asking about Grandma, which hurt almost as much as when he was asking because it meant the absence was becoming normal. The shop recovered, though. Shelby organized a little community fundraiser to replace the windows without even asking me. A lady named Margot from the bakery 2 doors down brought me a check and a loaf of banana bread and said, "Nobody messes with the flower lady." Caleb drew new smiley faces on the chalkboard sign. Things started healing. Then in February, Caleb got a birthday card in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside it said, "Happy birthday, Caleb. Grandma loves you. Nothing for me, just for him." He put that card on his nightstand next to Captain. Didn't ask to call her. Didn't say a word. Just kept it. And that's when I knew this was as close to an apology as Diane would ever get. Love funneled through a 1-0 year, old because she couldn't face me directly. I wrote her a letter. Real paper. Real envelope. I told her I loved her. I told her I'd always love her. But I also told her that love doesn't mean accepting being controlled, belittled, or destroyed. I told her the door was open if she ever took real responsibility. Not for show, not for the family, but for me and for Caleb. I mailed it on a Tuesday. She never responded, and I made my peace with that. It took time. A lot of late-night calls with Tamara and Shelby. A lot of watching Caleb grow into this brave, funny kid who keeps that birthday card on his nightstand right next to a stuffed sea lion, who apparently now needs a winter wardrobe. My family got smaller in one way and bigger in another. Tamara comes to every school event. Shelby sends flowers to the flower lady on her birthday. Uncle Ray and Aunt Patricia check in. Derek brought his kids to Caleb's birthday, and Jolene made the best lemon cake I've ever had. Diane, last I heard, she's okay, healthy, still in her house, still hasn't apologized. But I left the door open. If she ever walks through it with honesty and accountability, I'll be there. Until then, I've got a shop to run, a kid to raise, and Captain the Sea Lion to dress for winter. That's my story. If any of this hit close to home, if you've got your own Diane, your own broken windows, I want you to know that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary, even when it's your own mother. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like. It really does help. And if you would have handled something differently, I want to hear that too. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves.